Good evening. This is Edward, and this is sonsofgod.com, and it would be Thursday evening, the 17th, I believe, of December. And we're going to have a very last-minute podcast. I don't know how long we will keep this podcast up and available. It's not a topic that we have gone down this road before. This is outside the box, off the cliff, and then some. But we're going to talk about the intercession of the kingdom. That, in a roundabout way, is what we're going to talk about. However, really what we want to address are some of the principles and keys that are available within the scope of the intercession of the kingdom that we have not really taken advantage of, nor have we understood that they even exist. And so, like I said, this is probably not going to be kept online very long, for many reasons. So let me see how we can start this. Lord, we draw a blessing on the word. This word is in reality further down the road than really anyone is. And oftentimes you do that. You will bring a word, but it's much further down the road than we ourselves are at this point. And it causes us to have to reach in to grab hold of a deeper level in God that we haven't had. And that's not an easy thing to do, and it doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but it is something that you groan and travail to get into, because the word from the onset is that God is going to bring a people into a world of spirit. And that world will be much more real to them than the physical plane that they are leaving. And that He's going to lead us at a path that no one's really walked down before. Sonship is... There's nothing written down about the process of coming into sonship and what becomes available to the sons as they move more deeply into these days of the kingdom. So, Lord, this is just a small attempt to put down something that has been available, but we haven't really understood it, nor have we known of it. There's so much that God is doing, and there's so much that is available, but we don't access it because we don't know that. First of all, we don't even know that it exists, much less do we know that it's available. This is really new territory. From the get-go, this is new territory. We're learning about a world that we've had very little interaction with, relatively speaking. We're learning about something that it's not in any dictionary. There's no one really available to answer questions. And unless you've really been prepared for the deeper things of God, it's not real comfortable. And I know that over the years, Ann and I have brought a number of words that just haven't been that comfortable because they're beyond our reach. And then God, challenges us. Do you want to walk in these days of the kingdom? Do you want to possess the very thing that I possessed you for in the first place? And I think we've had to do a lot of soul searching to really ask ourselves, do we really want to walk with God in the Spirit? Do we really want to walk as the sons of God? And it has to become something that's not ethereal or just a nice religious concept, but it catches up to you and you realize, okay, this has to have a physical manifestation, and that would be through those that God is calling. And so, to say the least, this path has been a path of being challenged constantly. But that is part of what we've been raised up to do. It's to possess the deep things of the kingdom, to bring in the kingdom, to manifest the presence of God beyond what you see out in the earth. And so that's kind of a disclaimer, because this is one of those words that can be very much a challenge. But I know that with the word comes the ability from God and the grace to change and to become, to be able to identify and embody what God has in store for the sons. And that's been the case all along. So we're talking about intercession, and really and that's really the word. It was born out of the heat of the battle of the last 2 days, and we put a short call out to just a few people looking for some intercession, and I would say fairly soon afterwards we definitely felt a shift and a lifting of some of the conflict. And to that, we're thankful to you, Lord, for that. And to those that were able or to have heard the call. And so, but it did bring up something that I had not really looked at before. And we've been talking about the oneness of the body off and on the last month. We've been talking about the cloud of witnesses. We've talked over the years about the fact that we're one church, visible or invisible. And I know that's a little bit of a reach for many to grasp that and get out of the thinking that because someone has died and transitioned, and so the body is, ashes to ashes and the soul is sleeping, that they're dead, inaccessible. And that's not really the case, because the spirits are very much alive, very active, and as we've said before, that really is the essence of what we are in God. And even the Lord says He earnestly desires the communion with our spirits. It says He earnestly desires that which He is committed into you, your spirit. So we understand that to a measure, and we're still coming to a deeper level of grasping it, because you can't get away from the fact that a walk with God, until you break into levels of transformation that by and large it's a walk of faith. And faith at some point transitions to knowing, and it becomes manifested in the physical body. And you begin to manifest the truths and the principles. But until that time, it's a lot of faith involved, and it hasn't changed any. God speaks. It's beyond the scope of our reality and the scope of our understanding. And so all that you can do is to begin to have faith, but a faith that's very focused towards a reality or a provision that God makes real. And all of a sudden, it's like you realize that there is a level of truth, a level of reality that you had never seen. But upon having your eyes opened, you now see it. But there's still that transition from faith to knowing. And, so you're still in that walk of faith, of believing, but it's not blind faith. It's not a generic faith or something that you're just kind of believing in general, but it's very specific. God reveals something very specifically, and then you begin to activate your faith in that direction. And here again, that's just part of what our walk with God is like on a day-by-day basis. And so the whole concept of the church visible and invisible has been a struggle because by and large you don't see them. Now that's not to say that on occasion there aren't breakthroughs, and they'll appear, or they'll come in a dream or a vision or any number of ways, and then you're aware of them, or you're aware of interaction or communication with them, and you realize how much they're standing with us. Because some of the greatest strength that we receive are those through whom the Lord uses to minister to us, that are part of the cloud of witnesses. They're part of the church that we're a part of. They're on a different vibration or frequency level than we are. But before God, we're one people, one church. Not a church of the invisible over here and the church of the visible. It's one church before God. And we just have not had that many forays into really experiencing the oneness that we have with the cloud of witnesses. But they play a very important role at this time because their faith, their prayer, you go into the book of Revelation, the prayers of the saints go up, before the Lord like an incense. And they're crying out, "How long, O God?" And God's hearing them. So what the cloud of witnesses do is very valid, very real, and it's very much an effective part of the ministry of the sons of God as a whole. And we just haven't quite really seen it maybe from that light. We still have seen ourselves as separate. The church invisible over there, we're over here. But that's not how it is. And some of the moments of our greatest strength come when they appear and minister to us, because they have the capability to do that, to minister and to strengthen our hands. And on occasion they do that. They come through in times of great need, and they minister, and they have faith for us and with us. So that kind of sets the platform here of what we're talking about, because there is something available to us that we haven't known was available to us. Many years ago, the Lord brought a word And he was talking about the fact that we're tuning forks. And he was showing me an example of that. And he said, so here, you're a tuning fork. And of course, it was a struggle to understand exactly what it was he was saying at that time. But the fact remains that within us is the ability to change our frequency, change our vibration, like the Lord did when, they were seeking to throw him off the cliff. And the word says he just walked down and passed through their midst, the Pharisees. And he did that because he changed his frequency. I mean, that's a simple way to put it. And so there are capabilities that are available to us, but we haven't known it, and we haven't really known exactly how to utilize it. And there has been a struggle with the sons in feeling alienated, that you're the only one left in town, and to really have that awareness of the oneness that exists with the cloud of witnesses and the saints of God. But that does exist, and it's very valid, and they come through more often than we understand to stand with us and to minister to us. So many years ago, the word came and said, okay, you're a tuning fork. And it took a period of time before I began to understand what he was talking about. And that is the fact that a tuning fork, well, I guess in its true definition, or one application of a tuning fork, is how you would tune a piano to a certain frequency. So you can go, you hit the tuning fork one way, you have an A and a D or whatever it is, and you tune the piano. We are instruments that vibrate at a given frequency, but we are able to modulate the frequency that we vibrate on when we go to tune into people, which was always a key in ministry that we would have on Sunday evenings here in California. And it would be the ability to tune in to another. And, just a very simple explanation of acting and moving like a tuning fork. So, as we were in the midst of a great deal of warfare today, I began to understand another principle that is available to us and something that we haven't really seen before. And the teaching first began to come 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And the first time it came, it had to do with the elemental spirits. And I think maybe we referenced this in a word some time back. But in this appearing, the elementals were singing to us. And it was a worship before the Lord, but it was also directed to us. And we could feel the energy of that. And then they explained and said, okay, so as you have felt our energy, our faith for you and our worship, on the flip side, you can now follow that frequency backwards and find us, literally. And I know that here again we're stepping over, the cliff here on some of this, but you might call it reverse engineering, so to speak, because the minute you begin to have a contact with anyone in the realm of spirit, even if you aren't at a place that you need to be at, or even if you don't know their spiritual address, their vibration, frequency, their phone number, so to speak. Regardless of that, the minute that they reach out and begin to connect to you, that opens a portal in the Spirit that you are able to follow that backwards and actually come into their presence or communicate with them. And now that's, here again, this is something a little bit off the wall and a little bit new. But we were looking at the need for the intercession of the kingdom. And the fact that, it's more than a Joel's army relegated to just this plane of existence. It's literally a Joel's army of the kingdom of God that is comprised by not only the cloud of witnesses, but by many different orders of creation that exists. People, worlds, dimensions, we've talked about that. But it shouldn't be a surprise because the Father's kingdom is so vast. It's not just limited to the earth and to what's happening right here. His kingdom is so vast, and we've talked about that. And then it talks about it in the Gospels. When Christ, ascended, he passed through the heavens, setting the captives free. So it was far more than just the natural plane of releasing the captives and, having them walk down Main Street, Jerusalem, in a resurrected body, whatever. It was far more than that. The Lord began to set the captives free. The captives that have been on many different levels and dimensions and worlds. And, we understand so very little of it, but we see enough to know what does exist. And we've had different ones reach out to appear to us, to ask questions, to just, convey a communication. And the word has been coming for 30 years, that as we get into this breakthrough of the kingdom, that the elementals earnestly desire communication with the saints of light, but that they will not initiate that first appearing. It will have to be initiated by the sons themselves. And to do that, the sons have to come up to a level where they can then access the same frequency, the same vibration level of the different elementals. And then communication unfolds. In this time, we're talking about intercession, because as we move deeper into these days of the kingdom, the need for intercession is going to go greater and greater. And I think that's just how the Lord has orchestrated it, that, no one is going to get all the glory and say, see what I've done, but it's going to be the work of the body. And I know that if you go back into the days of the church age, you could think of the body as the prophets, the pastors, and the teachers, and, whatever, the fivefold ministry of Christ. And you see it on just this level of the natural plane and of the churches that exist. But it's so far greater than that. And so what we're finding is that the intercession of the kingdom is something that must involve every level in the Father's kingdom. And we've spoken before that there are many who have been prepared and raised up for this time. Some live on different worlds, different dimensions, different levels. But it doesn't negate the fact that God is calling the body together to move into a level of oneness. And we're still working on understanding what that's about. But going back into what I had talked about earlier, the whole concept of reverse engineering, or let's see. Well, I guess basically that would have to be the best, because I'm not really sure what kind of word to give it. Reverse signature, because everyone has a spiritual signature, a frequency about them. That is their signature. You and I have unique signatures. So do every other created being before God. Whether it's the angels, whether it's the fairies, whether it's the cloud of witnesses. It doesn't matter. They all have unique frequencies or vibrations. And so what will continue to prevail in this time is that the sons begin to access the strength of the body in the warfare that we face, because many have been prepared for this time, but they don't know exactly what's coming. And yet they've reached out. There's been an initial contact, but really no definitive answer. And so in looking at all of this outside of the box, began to realize that the keys moving forward are going to be the ability for the saints of light to interact and draw upon the strength and the intercession of those that stand with us. You know, there are so many more that are standing with us than we're aware of at this point. But that is all in the process of changing. And more, we are going to begin to reach out and pull different ones into the intercession, into the battle of the kingdom. Those whom God has prepared and that are in waiting, you might say. And so we began to reflect, okay, this is good. Now, how did you reach these people? Well, it goes back to something that in theory is very simple, but in execution, it takes everything that you got, because it's just another layer of dying out to the soul, dying out, to that within you which has resisted the changes of the kingdom. And so what we've been shown is that you can take that initial contact, that initial meeting that came, and you can follow that frequency backwards. And that frequency becomes like a highway through which you can reach out and communicate to those that live on that plane, in that area or region of the kingdom. And so the more this interaction comes with God's kingdom, because we've talked about the veil being paper thin, the more the crossover happens, the more they reach out and there's an exchange of communication, some exchange of just however minute. But that's all it takes to literally create a highway right back to them. And we haven't really seen that before, much less really understood it. But every time one of these reaches out, even if it's just for a fraction of a second, a highway is created, a way of going back through the veil and reaching them. And in that process, drawing their faith forward to stand with you in the intercession for the kingdom. This will be something that we'll have to study very closely, and we'll have to work on, and we're going to have to exercise this. Nothing's really going to happen without some real due diligence on the part of the saints to exercise some of these principles that God shows. And it's like the real key here is that the sons themselves become the key. The key to moving in these things is you yourselves. You become the key that unlocks these appearings and unlocks the ability within you to go and, like reverse engineer, follow the communication trail backwards and be able to break in upon that level of the kingdom and those people and draw them forth into the intercession that is needed right now. And it's going to get greater. The intercession is going to get greater. The need for it is going to be greater. And yet someone has to be able to reach out and follow the threads back to the various ones that have reached out initially and begin to draw them into the battle, into the intercession for the kingdom to come forth. I think this is probably all we really want to talk about this evening. We're just kind of laying the groundwork of a topic that is very deep and really can't be understood without really experiencing it firsthand. But greater are they that stand with us than those that are coming against the saints of light during this time. And that awareness has to open up for the sons. And part of what we're doing here tonight is just addressing the fact that something's available that we haven't seen. There's a level of communication, a level of oneness, a level of interaction with the cloud of witnesses, with their faith, that we haven't really understood nor been able to really access. But it's here. And it's been here. We just haven't seen it. We haven't understood that such a thing exists and or how to recreate it. How do you recreate these connections? How do you draw upon the power and strength that came through these connections? There's so many that are standing with us right now. And the clarion call is going out to them through the sons themselves to rally and stand up with the sons of God during this time to see the breakthroughs happen that must happen. And I don't think it'll be done by just a small handful. Not to say that it couldn't be. But I think it's going to comprise so many different ones from so many different levels within the Father's house that come together to see this resolution accomplished. So I think we'll stop here with the word for this evening. We'll see about taking this a little bit further next time. But this is something new that we haven't really talked about before. But it's something that God is going to continue to deepen both the understanding and the experience of. Because we need the strength from all of the saints invisible, the saints visible, the cloud of witnesses, everyone that is part of this push to see the kingdom break through. So Ann and I send our love and blessings to all of you this evening. And if you made the call, thank you, and we'll talk again on this matter. Amen.